speaker is Sarah. I'm not going to give you an introduction because you'll talk to yourself, but Sarah has done many things in her life, obviously, in particular managing communities and various other things, and she currently is head of Campus London, not Google Campus London, Campus
Credibility,
London.
very important.
Campus London.
Thank you. Yeah, so I wish I had slides, and I wish there was as nice as Adrian's. I am less prepared, I'm sorry. So when I was on the train today, I live in East London now, I grew up in Worcestershire. I was sat opposite a girl reading Go Girl, which is a magazine for tweens that I used to write for. And it reminded me of 2005, when I was writing for this magazine, interviewing Zac Efron, having a great time, very broke. And I decided to take on some freelance work at this thing called a startup. I didn't know what a startup was, I had to Google it. My dad actually used to work at Kinetic, and so did I when I was growing up. But it just hadn't sunk in at all, I had no idea what he was talking about. I was an arts graduate, I used to manage a vintage clothing shop, and I wasn't really interested in tech, to be honest. And the first time that I ever went to a tech hub was in 2005, it was in King's Cross. It was intimidatingly cool, and I walked in, and there were all these guys with like half-shaved heads. It was 2005, and I sat down and I took on my first ever job working for a startup, and it completely changed my career. And I went down this path of working for startups, doing kind of content and community, ending up running events in pubs, and then many years later, I got hired by Google to run a big team around Google Maps. When you're looking for like a vintage clothing shop or a restaurant, say, and you're looking for on Maps, a review comes up, and I used to run that bit. And what I do now is I run a 7-story building for entrepreneurs. And people often say to me, you work in tech, but you've got 2 arts degrees, you used to be a journalist, you've interviewed Justin Bieber. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of my big secret is I don't really care about tech, I care about people. That's what I get really excited about is the tech is great. That's my dad's field of work. My brothers are all developers too. I don't know what went wrong with me. I'm just not like that. I'm not built like that. But for me, the joy of hubs, the joy of places and spaces like this cool office, it's about getting people in the room. And that's half the battle, right? You know, when you're starting a company, like, so say you're PCA, you've got 50 employees, you're doing really well. Say you're Mary, you've just been funded by Uber's Travis, very exciting Mary. You know, it's partly about being in the right room. It's about bringing together the founders, the developers, the dreamers, the designers. You know, if you think about it logically, whether you're making amazing leather handbags or building a software app, it's never been easier to begin something now. You can do all of that from your living room, but yet we choose not to. We choose to go out and be sociable because humans are sociable animals. And Google have their own version of the garage. It's a little bit, I mean, HP's garages, you know, they're American garages, right? They're kind of massive comparatively to what we think of when we think of a garage. But the companies now that are doing really well, they might be starting in bedrooms. Maybe you have your idea in the shower, but they're growing in spaces that bring people together. And they're growing in spaces like campus, but all around the world, really. I think what we're doing on campus is great, but I'm kind of biased. There are spaces like that everywhere. And, you know, with campus, what we do, just to kind of explain it, we have a kind of open access cafe space that's a little bit too busy, to be honest with you. And it's first come, first served, Monday to Friday. The Wi-Fi is free, you pay for the coffee, and you get a free kind of membership badge. And we've got about 65,000 members. And what's really interesting to me is the first year that we had campus, these were often the people you might expect to be in a space like this. You'd walk in, there'd be like young guys in hoodies coding. And then over time it kind of shifted. So, you know, now the average age is 33, it's 38% female, 160 plus nationalities. And I think that's really how this kind of scene is going, is that, you know, these places are for entrepreneurs, yes, but they're also for startup workers, they're for creators, they're for YouTubers, they're for investors, they're for journalists, they're for people who work for startups. And that's things like lawyers for startups, accountants for startups. And a lady said to me tonight, I'm an accountant, it's really boring. And I thought, all of us in this room need you. Not boring. This lady over here, with the half-shaved head. But so the idea behind the Kiln was really about bringing people together. I think all of us know. In the survey, what came back, we asked people why you live in Worcester. And for the majority of people, it wasn't because they had to. It wasn't because their company had to be here. Let's face it, companies don't have to be anywhere anymore. That's the joy of how we live now. People were here because it was beautiful. We all know that. They were here because their families were here. They were here because it was really easy to get around. And I really believe that. And I say this as a happy Londoner who lives in a very busy city. I spent most of the summer in Tel Aviv and I've just come back. And the biggest difference, apart from the obvious incredible 24/7 sun and amazing food, is that London is really busy. There's a lot of noise. And yes, I think there are things that capital cities have that is great and powerful. There's certainly a lot of investment there. But increasingly, when you're thinking about growing a company, I don't believe that great talent is only in big cities. I don't believe that places to start is only in big cities. And I think certainly if you're thinking about cost of space and quality of life, then we're going to see these hubs popping up everywhere. So we've been doing this kind of roadshow recently with my team, going to like Edinburgh, Birmingham, Newcastle, kind of mentoring startups and kind of meeting them and hearing about what their biggest concerns are. Their concerns are not funding. They can come to London and get funding, they can go to Birmingham and get funding. They're not worried about that at all. They're not really worried about talent because great people are increasingly everywhere. What they're mainly worried about is space. How can they meet other founders? How can they know who their people are? And when Jamie and I were talking about this, so Jamie lived in London for 5 unhappy years, right? 10 unhappy years, it was that long. He always hated it, just wasn't his thing. So you moved back 2 years ago?
2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago. And began working in Malvern, and we were kind of talking about Worcester, and we were thinking about how many students there are here. And it struck us as really interesting. So again, often when you kickstart a community, a certain portion of those people are quite young. I mean, I don't believe that. I get quite frustrated when we think about entrepreneurship as being prevents the young, because again, I just don't believe that to be true anymore. I think what's exciting about the UK is people leave companies in their 30s and 40s and begin companies then, even older. And we got talking about the idea of a space. We got talking about the idea of running events. And then we met Hamish and Greg, and we heard they'd been thinking about the same thing for years, and we got talking as a 4. And we started running these events as a way to get to know people, because the first rule of any startup is do your research, right? See if the need is there. And we kept meeting people. We kept meeting people who were going freelance. We kept meeting people from the council, from the university, the PCAs, who basically have been a big data startup since the term was even, since before the term was even a thing. Now 16 years old, right? 16 years old?
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Cool building. And we kept hearing from people that the need is there. So where we are now with the Kiln is, and it's all in our yellow report, we believe the need is there for a bigger space. Where we are now, we have this movement. We have these groups coming together. We have founders sharing stories about spaces. We have a mini space, a very small Kiln. Ideally, we would like next year to have something bigger. We believe the need is there. And I think what we need to make that happen, I think first of all is you, the brains that are in this room, the excitement that we're hearing from you about what this could be. I think the second thing is sponsors, to be completely frank. We're going to need a bit of money to help get it started. I think we've already been looking at spaces that we think could work. And really, we think the most important thing with a space is culture. It's about having the right mindset. When you walk in the door, you know it's a space for you. We don't want this to be excluding. We don't want it to be too formal. We want it to be for all kinds of people. And I think Level 39 is a great example. I love those guys. They're really good friends of mine. And I think for what they do, so it's more of a space for kind of fintech startups that are doing really well. And you walk in and it's smart. And it's the perfect place to take your clients. But I think for some people, they might walk in and think, oh, maybe this isn't for me. And I think with something like the Kiln, we wanted to be somewhere where students from your media lab can come in and be selling in their work and talking to local businesses and being like, okay, we're great on Snapchat, you need our skills, let's do some kind of skill swap, and we can work for you. And I think that's how you get the students really excited about staying in Worcester. And I think for the founders, it's about having that community of people, and you can be like, oh my god, UX, it's a nightmare, let's talk about it. We think the culture is the most critical thing. I think beyond that, obviously, we all know that coffee is really important. We would love a space where in the evening we can run things like yoga, we can run meetup groups and things like that. But I think so much of this is optional. And I think so much of this we want to found and form over time with you. We don't want it to be what we think is best. And that's why we've taken our time to kind of really try and understand what people do need. And what was interesting is hearing from people, a lot of people work from home. A lot of people, I think it was you I was talking to last time about an event in Cheltenham that you go to, and sometimes on Fridays. Somebody I was talking to about like a freelancer Friday. People drive to Cheltenham because they want to meet other freelancers. And we thought, wow, that's really interesting, because clearly people feel like they want their people, right? And it is sometimes just like, oh my God, I'm late being paid by somebody. Can you kind of help me work out how to ask for that money, which is a horrible problem, but we all know anyone who's freelance knows that problem, right? So in terms of what I've learned at campus, I think the main lesson, so I've been involved there for 4.5 years now. The first thing we learned was to build it with the people that use it. Google is a big company. I've been there for 5 years, and I'm really not a big company person. I've got a bit of a quirky personality, shall we say. And I think I would only be there after this time if I felt that it really worked for me. So when we were thinking about campus, again, we did the research. We moved the companies in first, and I think my team is now 7, but it's for the size of building we have, it's a really small team. And I think we try and keep testing things the whole time. Like, needs are always changing, and you can't afford to be snobby or precious about what you've done before. And I think sometimes that can be really hard because you put your heart and soul into something and it just hasn't worked. And we've had so many high-profile failures, you wouldn't even believe it. Shall I tell you about one? Yeah. So, okay, so really early on, when we were planning out campus, we had never run a physical space before. And the most painful part of my job is I like people, and I like talking to people, and I get really excited about education. And so in terms of what my team do, we have the open access workspace. We have 2 floors of co-working run by a partner, so they get paid for the co-working, not us. We have C-Camp, who invest in companies. They've invested in about 220 in the last 8 years. We have open access event space. So we've hosted about 750 events in the last year. So that's hackathons, workshops, demo days. So anybody from an individual to a government, to a startup, to a corporate can apply. And we curate quite strongly, so we probably accept about 60% of the applications we get. The criteria is the event has to be free, aimed at our community, and great quality. And then we do kind of Google programming, and that's things like next week, Campus for Mums kicks off its 6th round, and that's a baby-friendly startup school for mums and dads. And for the most part, the reason we started that, I began that when I was a 20%er, sort of a 1-day-a-week program. I got sick of walking in the cafe, and all the women were 21. And I thought, why are they not coming in their 30s and 40s? Oh, they're having babies then. So we did this program to bring in mums and dads. And for the most part, these are people who've had amazing and continue to have amazing high-flying careers at like Amazon, Nokia, banks, that kind of thing. It's a 10-week program. And then this week we're doing Campus Exchange, which basically is we do it twice a year, and it's basically a week where we bring people to London, we put them up in a flat, and it's a week of product mentoring and kind of immersion. So tomorrow they're having an investor lunch with investors that might be interested in them. And the last one we did was around retail tech, so companies from like Israel, Berlin, Spain, Canada, we kind of select them quite heavily. This time around it's UK-based startups. Post-Brexit, we felt it was the right thing to do. I think we felt that we didn't know enough about certain hubs around the UK. As a Southwesterner, I really wanted us to pick a Southwestern startup, and we had to do it on quality, and in the end I was not able to persuade the rest of my team because we had to score everybody. And it really struck me that looking at like Bristol, Bath, Devon, Cornwall, was, looking at all of the talent that we have in this area. And I'm thinking of Kinetic. My dad has always lived in this part of the world. He used to work at British Aerospace too. Thinking about all the inventors that live in this part of the world, I was like, there's got to be more that we can do here to make these companies shine. To kind of, maybe it's about visibility, maybe it's about talent, maybe we weren't getting the message out. I totally lost my thread. I think one of the biggest failures we had when we first launched Campus was around people. We'd never run a building before. We'd hired a building. We've got it on a long-term lease from the government for 10 years, from the Mayor of London. And the first thing was that we decorated the building really cheaply because we were like, we don't know if this is going to work. It's a test. We're now 4.5 years in. The lift is the bane of my life. We're replacing it this year. It's costing us like £250,000 to replace the lift. I had no idea lifts were this expensive. And it's the kind of thing where that's like, we have a decent budget, but that's a massive, sizable chunk of what I'm going to do this year because I think it's worth it. The lift is really slow, it drives everybody crazy. I got trapped in it once, it was terrifying. And I was like, if this happens to any of my mums, if this happens to a journalist, basically everything is over. But in the first year, we did not realise who we would need to staff it. So unbelievably, in the first year, it was my predecessor, easy, 1 security guard, and 14 20%ers. He got 14 of us from Google to come and do 1 day a week with him. And we thought that was enough. And at the end of the second week, when he basically had a meltdown to me over the phone, I was like, I think we need to, and we basically went and advocated for more people, but it was just, we didn't know how busy we'd get so fast. And that sounds like kind of a bullshit story of like, we were so successful. But I don't think we've really understood the kind of demand for a space like ours. And actually the the biggest problem I have now is our cafe is really busy. So if you think about it, if you work in a Starbucks, there's that pressure to buy a coffee. You can't always have video calls. If you're working in your bedroom, you get kind of lonely. But I think working in our cafe, the idea is you can turn up, get a seat, that's your desk for the day. You don't have to buy coffee, you can bring in lunch if you want. It's very easy. It gets really busy. And particularly outside of August, you're nodding your head, Mary, because you know. It's just too busy, right?
Yep.
But outside of August, it's full by 9:30, and people complain to me. And the building is finite. I cannot put more seats in there. We tried, it was bad. And I think that's something that we've kind of learned the hard way, is over time I became more comfortable with the idea that when you're in that space works for certain purposes. And I get really obsessed with placemaking and the idea of spaces and needs and that kind of thing. That space works when you want to meet people that day, when you want to come in. And this is the whole serendipity idea, right? If we had our first wedding last year, it was great. They met in the queue to get coffee. And I have a rule that whenever I'm in the cafe, I talk to the person in front of me in the queue and I'm like, what are you doing here? And it's really interesting how often they're like, I left Goldman Sachs last Friday and I heard this place was good for startups. Or I moved from Italy yesterday and I'm looking for a housemate and I heard this place was good for tech. And it's amazing how often you hear that, because you hear it enough times and you realise people talk and it's great. And it's not about, these communities, it's not about Google, it's not about the big tech company doing something, it's about people meeting each other. And for me, that's the biggest benefit of any space. We do a lot of formal education, we're doing a machine learning masterclass tomorrow. I don't think that's why people come here at all. I think they come to campus because they know they can meet other people who are in the same bucket as them. And for me particularly, what's really exciting is when they don't fit the mold of an entrepreneur. So, again, my dad's a developer, all of my brothers are. I have a family that's very techie and I'm the artistic black sheep. I'm not good at that kind of thing at all, and I'm very open about that. I think companies need all skill sets to succeed. But when I bumped into someone that I used to work with at Glamour magazine, and she was like, yeah, I just launched a luxury e-commerce sportswear site for ladies. I'm an entrepreneur now. And I was like, wow, this is great. Because the more that we break these molds of what it means to be, the UK has this really rich history of invention. We invented so many things in this country and we do not give ourselves enough credit for that. But the more that the role models that we have for entrepreneurship look like Richard Branson, he's done amazing things, but he's quite remote. I want us to have role models that look like us. I want them to be making innovation that works for all of us. I want the products that we use every day to be built for us. And right now, a lot of those products are built in the US. That's a great thing, but I still feel there's stuff we can build for us, by us. And that really is the idea of the Kiln, is somewhere to come together to build stuff that works for us. And even if your company doesn't work out, to have someone sat next to you saying, hey, great, the next thing will be great and better, and you'll know more next time. So without further ado, I talk really fast, I'm sorry. It's kind of a problem. We've only got a few of these, I'm afraid. But here, hello. But on here, there is loads of information about the survey results. For us, they were really interesting because people came back to us and they were really honest about what they need. And a lot of it is physical space. A lot of it is a place to go that's not their bedroom or their living room or a cafe. And I think we hope, right now the Kiln is a community, it's a micro space. In time, we really look to Malvern, to be honest, sorry, but I think there's room for many hubs, right?
Yeah.
I think we look to a space where we can hold classes, where we can hold workshops in the evening, where you can take a client, where you can have meetings, where you can be hot desking, where you can go on your first day of being freelance and know there are people there who've been there before. We're really excited about it, and I think this is the fourth event.
This is our fourth event, is it? Fourth event, yes, fourth event. Fourth event, this one.
And yeah, so there's the 5 of us around the room. Please come and see us. As mentioned, what we're really looking for is your help, your contacts, your generosity of spirit. Helps with sponsorship, definitely. And I think also tips on space. We're really curious about sharing space with somebody. I think that's kind of our preference is, again, we want to collaborate, not compete. We want to build something that really works for all of us. And just looking ahead, I think also people to help us build it, like founder tenants, that kind of thing.
So actually on that note, Will has been doing some designs for what the interior of our space will look like. So that, today in some ways it's a bit of a pitch from us to you, because you've heard from Adrian, you've heard from Sarah about how we go about things. Now we need to actually do it. Okay, so you're trapped in the room now, unfortunately.
Should we let everyone get a drink first?
Before we do,
okay, sorry.
Can we? What we'd like to do is I'd like Will to show you his ideas about what the space will look like. We've talked about the space. Actually, we've been looking about this idea of a flexible space, something that you actually own. And Will tell us all about it now.
Basically, I've done a couple of sketches here, and they're basically responding back to all of the comments that we've had over the last 4 events. And a lot of it is, one is a mood board. I'll put these probably on the table, probably over there by the window, so you can have a look through. There's one board which is a mood board, but it does look a bit shiny and a bit fashionable. So don't be too scared. I'd like to have a look at the concept of what's on here. So it's picking up ideas of what people want to see at the Kiln, basically. So, cafes, cycle storage, lockable spaces, private phone calls, possibly movable walls so we can have displays, galleries. We've been looking at lone working pods. So we might be able to have one space and make it as flexible as possible, really. And a lot of this does look quite fashionable, but just take the concept of each one, and all the colours look nice. So
what was really interesting is things that kind of came back for us. First of all was location, like somewhere central where people could drive, bike, get the bus to. I think second of all was like the mix of public and private. So they wanted places where people could collaborate and meet and mingle, but also spaces where you could take private phone calls and have quiet time.
Yeah, there's the geographical spaces
Yes.
that we've been looking at. We've been looking at a few buildings that we've discounted and had a look at and thought yes or no, too small, wrong location. It's connection, transport, railway, car parking into town, somewhere where people can go and get lunch. There's that geographical stuff, but there's also what's going to happen inside. Now, we can only anticipate that and be aspirational at the moment because we haven't actually found a building or got any funding, but we're getting there. So we thought we're going to keep on being aspirational, and then when we have got the funding and haven't found a building, we can just go straight in and go for it. So the second board, this one is just the main point that I've picked up on from speaking to people over the last couple of months. And it seems to me that flexibility is the most important thing that we can do. I think if we try and shoehorn everything we want to do into one room or one building, having a series of smaller buildings which are specific for a purpose won't work because it'll be empty 50% of the time. You'll have a specialised photography studio that might be used maybe 10 times a month, and then the next month it'll be fully booked, and you lose what you're doing there. So I think the principle behind it would be to try and find one large space which then can be divided into a series of any rooms that you want. So this is based on a 300 square metre block, basically. So we think it's probably our upper limit of size, but this is what we're working to at the moment, and obviously the numbers need to work out to see how many people we're going to have per day. But these are 9 square metres. This is kind of a one-person office. And if we could have room dividers, curtains, movable walls, or you could have some of these pods which are on here, which you could roll in or roll out of the way, you could fill it. So if you had a day or a week where you had a lot of people, I can't count that quickly, a lot of people working individually, you could have this arrangement, or you could split it into a conference. Maybe there's a photography exhibition going on here, or a meeting going on here. And then obviously there's a million different organisations and different spaces that you can do, but it means you can use everything you can, the whole space, all day long, every day of the year, possibly. That's the plan.
And we really do want a space that fits the purposes of the community. So whether it's a locker to keep your gear in overnight, while we pack everything away to meet up in the evening, we really want somewhere that kind of works for what's happening locally. And I think the main thing that came back in the survey was flexibility. People want somewhere that works for them when they need it.
Before we have that, I'm really sorry, before we have that, can I just have one quick pitch, which is, because I just wanted to say, so, and I said we will let you out, I promise, but I have a list here of 6 things that we need, okay, which are in the book here. I'll just read them out now so that everyone knows. If you can provide this yourself, or if you know people who can, we need you to let us know, because that's how we'll be able to make our next step, okay? So we need a project management team, okay? We work full time, we need a project management team to help us. We will need staff at some point, obviously. We need the building, we touched on that. We could do with some cash, fair enough. We need founder tenants, okay? So if you represent a business that could be a founder tenant in some way, that's a great way to start us with an initial chunk of funding and involvement. And network of contacts to provide advice and inspire our startups. If you know others, that would be nice.
Right, my time.